Hey, I'm Jeremy, and I'm here with 4 of the awesome authors that are part of the YA Harlequin tour that's going around the country currently. Could you first introduce, starting with Katie, introduce yourself and then talk a little bit about your book?
I'm Katie McGarry, and I'm the author of Pushing Limits and Dare You To. I write YA contemporary. The first one deals with a foster kid and a girl who has no memory of a night that left her scarred. And the second one deals with a girl who is trying to take care of her mother who has addiction issues, and she ends up going to a small town where she falls in love with a baseball player.
I'm Cara Lyn Shultz, the author of Spellbound and Spellcaster, which is YA supernatural fantasy about reincarnated soulmates that are under a curse, where if they get together, she is destined to die, and they're destined to relive this every single time they're reincarnated, and the author of an upcoming YA trilogy that I can't really talk about just yet.
I'm Julie Kagawa. I'm the author of the Iron Face series, which deals with a teenage girl whose younger brother is kidnapped by fairies, and she goes into the fairy world to rescue him. My second series is Blood of Eden, which is a post-apocalyptic vampire series, and my third series is Call of the Forgotten, which deals with the younger brother of the heroine of the first series and his adventures in the end.
Hi, I'm Aimee Carter. I wrote the Goddess Test series, and I have the upcoming Black Coat Rebellion series, the first book of which is Pawn, and it's a dystopian about a society where you take an aptitude test at age 17, and based on that, you are assigned a rank, and that rank decides your entire life.
Now, each one of you writes about a pretty significantly different subject matter. You with Greek mythology and vampires and the Fae and supernatural and contemporary. So what is it that you think, if you were to pull all your books together, is there like one common thread, like an overall theme that you think it carries maybe between each one of your books, that normally your books might be shelved in a different area of the store, but is there a theme that might be pulled together that you might think?
Really hot guys.
They're all about strong heroines kind of finding their identity and not letting any outside forces define them and finding their way, and through a lot of times very, very extraordinary circumstances, be it real world things that could actually happen or fairies abducting your little brother.
Strong heroines that are probably outsiders and outcasts at the beginning, trying to find their place in the world and discovering their strength along the way.
Actually goes great into my next question, which is, most authors would say that writing characters and character development it's a very crucial part of the book, and it also can be very difficult. But what is it about your books, because you all have very kick-ass heroines? You write the female main character very well. So what is it about your character that you think is easy for you to write, but also that you love, that about just having that kick-ass heroine that just kind of takes the book by storm, and just because there's not a lot of that. I mean, there's books where where the female character is a pushover, and what is it about your books that makes it stand out? Say, this is who I am.
Well, Allison in my vampire series is the kick-ass girl who turns into a vampire and is trained with a katana, so she's pretty kick-ass. But also she has inner strength. The urge to drink blood and the urge to feed is very strong in the vampire sense, and she's constantly struggling against that. And it's her stubbornness and her will to not become a monster that I really love about her.
For Dare You To, I really love Beth. Beth is the kind of girl who's not afraid to say whatever is on her mind, and she's not really worried about the repercussions of that. And I like that about her. I like that she's fearless in that way, and I think that's something I really admire in her.
In the Goddess Test series, Kate is willing to give up just about anything to save not her boyfriend, but her mother, her family, the only family she has left. So I think that's something that is a little bit, I don't want to say unique, but isn't seen as much in the YA world as saving the boyfriend.
With Spellbound and Spellcaster, when taken together, the book, Emma she's had a really rough start, and she's kind of finding her way and finding her inner strength, and at the end of her story, she's the one who saves her boyfriend, not her mom. Her mom's dead, so she wishes she could have. But she doesn't need to be rescued. She's the one who's doing all the rescuing. And she's also kind of getting comfortable in her own skin and finding her way, and also kind of testing her limits and seeing what her powers are. And it's very easy for her to maybe take advantage of those powers and kind of get revenge on people who've been mean to her, and kind of seeing she doesn't want to take that extra step and become a bully or become the kind of monster that she could very easily become, because she's been such a persecuted character for all these previous chapters.
From the beginning of your writing, did you kind of foresee your main character being such like a fierce badass, or did that just kind of develop naturally through your writing, that you just kind of, as you wrote, they kind of just became more outgoing, more like honest with themselves, to where they felt to put themselves out there more and be, like I said, fierce?
In the Iron Face series, Megan started out very, very shy and very uncertain of herself, but I did want her to grow throughout the series, and that's her character arc. Starting out she was a little bit of a pushover in the beginning, but she grew into, her role, and at the end she became a queen. In the end, that was her character arc. Growing up, realizing that there are things that she can do and there are things that she has to do. She can't sit back and do nothing anymore. From the beginning of the Immortal Rules, I knew Allie would just be, this kind of snarky, kick-ass vampire girl. She kind of jumped off the page at the very first word.
I knew I wanted to have characters that were strong, kind of had a really strong point of view. And it was also really important for me that they have kind of a sense of humor about themselves, almost to the point of where it's a little self-deprecating, because I feel like that's very much how you are as a teenager, and there's this immediate reaction to almost like make fun of yourself before someone else can. Kind of this very strong, like, this is my wall of defense, and at least that's what I was when I was a teenager. Like, I was very quick to make a joke. That was how I kind of found my way in with people, and I wanted it to ring true to how I knew I was as a teenager. So I wanted her to be strong. I wanted her to be funny, and I hope that I translated that with them. But I did definitely want her to be strong. I didn't want to push over.
With Kate, she did start off kind of in her own little world, and through circumstance, she was forced to blossom. She really had no choice. If she didn't, bad things were going to happen. So it really was also a character development issue. Kitty, my girl in the Black Coat Rebellion, she's pretty hard, kick-ass from the beginning. She's kind of hard-nosed. She's had a really rough life, and she grows up in an orphanage in a really, just a hard situation. So she has to, it's do or die for her. And that's really how it is throughout the series as well.
For my first book, Echo, she was probably a lot like Megan in the essence of being shy. Echo was fearless in her head. But on the outside, she wasn't particularly fearless. She kept things to herself. And then I wanted by the end of the novel for her to be that individual who would speak up. Whereas Beth, that I love her, and she's so fearless in what she says. In honesty, it's a shield. And at the end of the story, she realizes this is her shield. So she is this really awesome, strong character, and she remains a strong character. But in honesty, like, her character arc is learning her vulnerability.
Now, out of all of your characters, because out of each one of your books you have, an overwhelmingly amount of characters to pull from, but is there a favorite that you have that's either just the sexiest to write, or because you prefer just writing those scenes that we all know about, or is there just like an action scene that a character, jumps out on the page, like you said, and is there just one character that jumps out at you that you just love to write, that if you could just write about them all day long, that you would just do that?
The Iron Face series, for a long time, my favorite character to write was Grimalkin, because he is snarky and sarcastic and says what he wants in any situation, and he knows everything, and he's a cat. But in the Immortal Rules series, my favorite character that surprised me actually when I actually started the second book is Jackal. And Jackal became a major character. He was sort of the villain in the first book, but he becomes kind of an anti-hero in the second book. And he's just completely, he has a very dark, morbid, inappropriate sense of humor, and he's a lot of fun. He has a lot of snarky comments, so I enjoy writing.
With Spellbound and Spellcaster, I loved writing Angelique, because she was such a great foil for the two main protagonists, and also anything snarky that you could ever think to say about two like YA characters falling in love, she says it. Like every criticism you would have, she just says it. And it was just fun to like, even when you're writing these things, you know, you love it. You love writing romance. You're into it, but you're sometimes like, oh my God, is this like a little too cheesy? She would say it. Like she's she's kind of my way of like yelling at myself when I'm writing something. And she was so much fun to write. And actually even had her, like, where she lives is the building I grew up in. Like, totally just wanted her to be like, I love you, Angela, you're so cool. But with the new series, I love the main character. I love being in her head. She's just really fun. She has a really kind of biting point of view, and she's really funny. So she's my new favorite.
My next book is Isaiah's book. It comes out in November. It's called Crash Into You, and I have a crush on Isaiah. So him, I just love him.
Every time I get this question, my gut reaction is to say Henry, who's a love interest in my Goddesses series. But truthfully, I kind of love writing every single one of those characters because I know their motivation, I know their backstory, and in order to make writing them interesting to me, I have to make them interesting. So I try to make them as interesting as humanly possible, and it kind of turns into I can't choose because they're all interesting to me.
Now, about your writing, is there something that's easiest for you to write, whether it be a romantic scene or an action scene or anything like that? It's just there's something that you find just comes naturally that you just love writing?
Very violent, bloody action scenes. I have a really hard time with romance. The kissy scenes and the mushy scenes, I have a hard time writing that. I like writing that, but what comes easiest to me is any time that, you know, let's say Allison is slicing through a horde of rabbits with her sword. That's the stuff that comes easiest to me.
I'll have certain scenes that I've been building up in my head that I can't wait to get to. So those become really easy for me to write because I've already mapped them out so much in my head that it's almost like I've been plowing through all these plates of vegetables and now I've got my dessert and I can't wait to, you know, sink my teeth into it. But so it's those scenes, and it's also dialogue, particularly between the two main protagonists. I love writing their interplay, and that was the same with Emma and Brendan from the first two books, and with the two protagonists from the new series. I just love writing their back and forth.
I would say, honestly, for me, it's the intimate conversations between them, and I'm not like referring to the kissing scenes. It's that moment when they're about to really share something that speaks a lot about themselves. Those are my favorite to write, and those are definitely the easiest for me to write.
I love writing arguments. Dialogue, oh my gosh, I love it when two characters are just going at it, and not in the romantic sense, but in the I'm gonna rip your head off sense. But I don't have any, you know, I love arguments. Those are the scenes that I just fly through, and they're usually the ones that I added the least as well. So.
I also love writing the scenes that make people cry a lot. I really enjoy writing those. It's probably
It's a very sadistic way of looking at writing.
Yeah, there we go.
Good. Well, that is our time because the library is closing. But I want to thank you guys and thank Harlequin for sending you guys here. And I'm sure you have a lot more, because you have like what, 9 more stops? Like how many stops total? A few more stops left on the tour. So I want to thank you guys for sitting down with us and chatting and for stopping by New York and coming by.
Thank you so much for
having us.